Hey guys, this is Leigh with Steel Raven Farms. I just wanted to give you guys, I guess, an update. We decided that we're going to start doing a podcast to help our listeners and our readers and all of that. We've noticed over the last 2 years that we've been doing the blog that, you know, there's a ton of people out there that listen to podcasts and listen to audio. And I'm not necessarily one of those people. I'm a reader. That's what I do. But I have fallen down the rabbit hole of audio here recently because, you know, I've got a long drive to work, which is actually what I'm doing right now. I'm currently driving to work. And I figured, you know, what the hell, why not? Right? So this podcast is titled The Beginnings. Where we were, what we did, how we got started with Steel Raven Farms. So in 2021, we bought our property. But before that, I had been gardening and canning on and off for, I don't know, like 10 years. And I loved it. I loved every little bit of it. Well, I've been gardening since a kid because I can vividly remember driving my mom crazy when I planted like tulip bulbs and stuff like that. And she's like, well, you know, we're not going to be here to see it grow or whatever. And I was like, well, I don't care. So pretty much my entire childhood and most of my adulthood, we did not own property, right? Like we rented, we lived in an apartment, stuff like that. And when we bought our house in Texas, you know, we put in a small garden. It had like, I don't know, 8 4x12 raised beds. And man, I loved that garden. And we decided to move back to Georgia to be closer to family. You know, both Jared and I are paramedics. And we were like, we're going to move back to Georgia. Well, cue another, I think it was 6 years of renting. And I had a garden at, you know, one of the houses, and, you know, it was cool. It was great, but we wanted something a little bit more, obviously. And Jared told me, you know, I want a cabin in the woods. That's my retirement. And in my head, it was always a cabin in the woods in the mountains, because that's where I felt the most peace. And with our jobs, peace is important. So we started cleaning up the credit, starting doing all the things that we need to do to buy a house, and bought the property. Now we are in Clarksville, Georgia. It's the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains, and that's Zone 7B. Now like I said, I'm a big gardener. I love my goats. Those are my two things with homesteading, right? Like everything is super cool. But those are my two things. I absolutely love my garden. It is a tangible, feeling. And I absolutely love my goats. I cannot describe to you the pleasure that I get when I can go out into the goat yard and hang out with my goats. Like, it is so cool. And for a city kid, it's probably cooler than that, you know, for somebody that lived in the country their entire lives and, you know, maybe had chickens or goats or pigs or whatever. And, you know, they're used to it. Well, I was born and raised a city kid. This is the first time that I've ever lived on acreage. This is the first time that I've ever had, my own place. Like, I can do whatever I want with it. I don't have to worry about neighbors. Well, I do have to worry about neighbors, but it's more being considerate of my neighbors versus, you know, the neighbor's going to call the cops because I have chickens. So that's really cool. And, you know, even I'll go through the saga of the pigs. But even with the pigs, they were like, look, we get it. Like, pigs don't stay put. And we're like, yeah, but we don't want them, you know, wrecking your yard. And they're like, it's a yard. It can go back. Like, it's not a big deal. And I was like, man, if you did that in the city or in suburbia, you know, you'd have to pay for somebody to get a new lawn, right? And out here in the country, they're like, we don't care. And I was like, okay. So this is a first for us, and we're learning, and like we're bringing skills that we had prior to, but we're really learning as we go, and you know, how to do things, and you know, so on. And whenever I give a quote expert opinion, understand that I am still learning. Now, one of the things that rang true, because I was getting really frustrated with one of the Facebook groups that I'm a part of, it's for goat health, right? Like, you know, my goat's doing this, what do I do? And I remember asking, like, when do you feel like you have a handle on raising goats? And, you know, one of the ladies on there, and I don't know names, obviously, nor do I care because it was a long time ago, but she was like, well, if you don't know what you're doing, you shouldn't have goats. And I remember getting really defeated by that because, you know, we had already lost 2 goats. I clearly don't know what I'm doing. And I had a scathing reply, right? Like, I was going to jump in both feet. And the other group members beat me to it. And the one that stands out the most, she was like, you know, OP, original poster. She said, do not let anybody get you down. She's like, I've been doing this for 50 years. And if I don't have 1 goat die a year, it's a slow year. She's like, you will never know everything there is to know about, you know, raising goats. Never. She's like, and if anybody tells you they're an expert, they're a sack of shit. And I was just like, okay. Okay. Like, it makes me feel better. And what I have learned over the years, again, I'm not an expert, but I've raised goats for quite a while. And I've had my first year of goating, I literally, like, we killed 2 goats. We had no idea what we were doing. So, well, let me back that up. We did not kill them because we didn't kill them. But the flip side to that is that our lack of knowledge killed them. And so because the goats are mine, you know, Jared and I split chores. That doesn't mean that he doesn't do them, but I'm the one that spearheads the goats. He's the one that spearheads, you know, the building of stuff, you know, like we have our roles, and that's fine. But I delved deep into goats, you know, learning everything I possibly could. And while I know better, I don't know everything. And so my Goat 101 course that I have, and I'll put that down in the show notes, is actually not all me. It's a lot me. But this is experience that, you know, goating has given me over the last, you know, 3 years. And again, I'm not an expert. I'm not an expert. But what I do know, I know really well. I know exactly what to feed goats. You know, it's very rare that I have to look up online, you know, can I feed this to goats? The other side to that is that I also will feed it. I'll feed a tiny amount to goats and see, right? Potato leaves. Potato leaves are a prime example. Potato leaves are apparently toxic, like regular potatoes are toxic to goats. And I didn't know that. And so we were pulling potatoes out of the bed, and I gave, you know, Stella, my 3rd favorite goat, because I have favorites, and they know that they're my favorites. I gave her a little piece, and she was fine. And like the internet's sitting there saying, you know, oh, potato leaves are, you know, toxic, your goat's gonna die. And I was like, I don't think that's accurate. You know, because like I gave her potato leaves, and when I say a little bit, I mean like a stalk of a potato plant, like a whole stalk. It was not like one tiny little leaf. It's a whole thing. And she was fine. So when it comes, that's my goating spiel and my gardening. I friggin' love gardening. Again, I said that, Jared and I are paramedics. I've been doing that for 10 years and I friggin' love it. There's nothing, my job is cool. It's very hard. In fact, it's a job that takes more than it gives. It is a lifestyle job. It is not something that, the weak or the faint-hearted can handle, and that's okay. That's fine. But the garden is where I find my refuge, right? When I have had a really shitty shift, I go play in the garden. And in fact, Jared knows if I've had a bad shift because I'm either in the goat pen or the garden. That's it. I am probably not in the house. I'm not crying in bed. That's not who I am. If that's who you are, go right ahead. There is no judgment here, but who I am is I'm out in the garden. And he's like, it's snowing. And I'm like, I don't care. I'm out in the garden because that's what makes me feel better. I stick my hands in the soil and I play with my plants and, I don't care if it's going to live or die. I just want to play with my plants. And so, that's Steel Raven Farms. So again, when I'm not an expert gardener, I wouldn't say that I kill more than I save, but it's definitely a toss-up. Our garden this year, I was in a bad headspace and I couldn't get in the garden. We were Jared was trying to build the greenhouse. I was trying to pay for the build of the greenhouse. And so I wasn't in the garden very much. And then the pigs were constantly getting in the garden. Chickens were getting in the garden. And I just, probably about June, which is really not great. I threw my hands up and said, I'm not doing it. It is causing me too much stress. It is not my peace. I'm not doing it. And it was the first year since being on the homestead that we haven't had a garden. The first summer we had a garden, and then the second summer we had a garden. The first summer we did not have a garden. We were just still trying to figure out the property because we moved in the middle of summer. And so after all of that, the point of this podcast is to reach those that don't want to read, right? So a lot of these earlier episodes are going to be expanded on of the blog post, right? So I wrote a blog about building your legacy and what does that look like? And when it comes to when I do the podcast for this, when I do the podcast for that blog post, it's going to be more in depth, right? Because I have a voice. I can actually talk about it. And so that being said, we're going to post these onto various platforms, right, where you get your podcasts. We will be starting a Patreon for the podcast. I'm also looking to do, looking to do an ad-free membership so that, if you have, if you listen to the podcast, there's a really good chance that you're going to hear an ad, right? And so the plan is that when we put this stuff on Patreon, you'll have access to the whole library, right? You'll have access to the bloopers. You'll have access to, all these different things. And you'll have access to ad-free content as well, right? So it's on the Patreon account. We'll make sure that, the blog posts are ad-free. All of those things. So we're still working that out, still trying to get that figured out. But for right now, we're just going to redo blog posts and add in some kidisms and all of that. You know, the data that y'all, my life is insane. It's like, I love my life and I wouldn't trade it for the world, but it's crazy. But anyways, I'm gonna hop off because I am driving. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, put them in the comments. I don't know if you can. I think we're doing them every Tuesday and Friday. We'll be uploading new blog posts. That's the schedule for right now, is Tuesday and Friday. If that changes, you'll be the first to know. Well, actually, you'll be the second to know. I'll be the first to know. So yeah, I hope you guys have a great day, and I will talk to y'all later.